Hey, sorry for the interruption, but we wanted to let you know that this week's episode is brought to you by Spotify for Podcasters. Really cool app. Josiah and I use it for every single show that we bring to you every week. You can edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so you can start creating as soon as you log into the platform. You can easily distribute your podcasts to Spotify and everywhere else the podcasts are heard, just like we do every single week. You can also create video podcasts on Spotify, which is really cool. And of course, you can earn money like I'm doing right now by including ads and even podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free. There's no catch. We really love it. We use it every single week. So we encourage you to go download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. All right, let's get back to the show.
Radical! Welcome to this week's episode of the Print on Demand Cast. Each week, join the gnarly Travis and Josiah as they provide insight into the print on demand industry and equip you with the totally tubular tools, advice, and strategies you need to achieve success and hopefully have a few laughs along the way. Now on to this week's Totally Tubular show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Print on Demand Cast. Things looking a little bit different. Travis and I are recording on a Sunday, the Lord's Day, or Sabbath. I guess it depends. There's some, which is Sabbath, Saturday, Sunday. I don't know, but it's a church day for Travis and I typically. But we wanted to record this afternoon because we got some things coming up the first half of this week when we'd usually record. And we weren't able to. So we were dedicated to making it happen for you in the podcast multiverse. So Travis, how's it going, man? How's things over there at Casa de Ras?
Good, man. Having a nice leisurely Sunday afternoon. Got home from church and just hung out with the kids a little bit and had some dinner and then jumped on the podcast with you. Been really enjoying the feedback we've gotten from the episode with Juna last week and just the conversations we've had with him since the episode aired. He's just been so communicative and like really wanting to help us with like SEO on the video and, and just different things like that. It's been really cool to connect with him more, really have a lot greater appreciation for what he's built, on the social media side of things, and watched a couple of his videos since we had since we actually did the interview with him. And man, what a guy. We were not kidding when we said he was spinning a lot of plates.
Yeah, it was incredible that he, reached out after the episode aired and said, I loved listening to the podcast, what I didn't get to hear in the intro outro, and hey, here's some free tips. Try these keywords. Here's an idea. And a lot of it is stuff that you and I have talked about doing. And we've talked, we having another, I guess it's another reason we should just go to a brewery and hash out and strategize. But it's a lot of what we had talked about, but he was kind of reaffirming and confirming some of those things. But then for him to just say, hey, here's some keywords, here's some this, try that, here's an idea. If you guys follow us, you should be following us on the social medias. Instagram.com/printondemandcast and Facebook.com/printondemandcast or the Facebook group where, we have a graphic that he actually sent us like, hey, here's an idea. And it was something that he had said, kind of a soundbite quote type thing in text with his picture. And it was really, really well done. So I wish we could afford to just say, hey, man, so just want to, be our guy. But the last thing he needs. Yeah, exactly. The last thing he needs is another plate to spin, I feel like. But super appreciative of everything he did to help us out. And he's the real deal, man. I really, really enjoyed being able to chat with him.
Yeah. Speaking of social media, if you do follow us on Instagram, you might have seen something that I posted last Thursday evening.
Yeah.
And you may be wondering a little bit about what that is. I wanted to ask you, Josiah. So basically what we did was on Thursday, we had our Christmas party, our Make Your Mark Design Christmas party, because obviously we can't do it in December. And then in in January, there was a lot of things going on. There was a couple of COVID cases and people had to isolate and all that. And so we pushed it forward. We were going to do it at the beginning of February, and then we were going to bring Josiah on. And so that kicked it back a little. We finally did our Christmas thing this last Thursday. So I wanted to ask you, Josiah, how was your first Christmas party at Make Your Mark Design?
Man, it was fun. It was the first time that I have ever done an escape room. I'd heard a lot about them, and to be fair, I mean the guys at Rabbit Hole, was it Rabbit Hole Entertainment or Rabbit Hole
Recreation?
Recreation, yes. Man, incredible job. I mean,
it's very cool.
Coming from a theater background, I walk into that room and I'm like, the set design here and the production and building all this stuff out, it was incredible. I was very, very impressed. But it was a lot of fun. The girl that does the embroidery, Melody, was the MVP. She crushed it. And she was like, she solved a good chunk of those, puzzles and clues. And we survived. We escaped with 3 minutes to go. So it was in typical, thriller fashion, last minute until we, finally escaped I don't even remember the whole thing, but everything, something was going to explode.
People were going to die.
Oh, yeah. People, lives were on the line. And so, we were able to save the world. And we escaped with 3 minutes left to spare. And then we went and ate at Verde, which is a Mexican restaurant in Louisville. Great food. Amazing tacos. Really good. Oh, yeah. Those tacos were so good. Burritos great. But then downstairs, there is a arcade called Tilt. And I actually learned why they named the name of the place Tilt. Did you know why they named it?
No, I didn't. Do tell.
So Zion, my nephew, who works at Verde, the restaurant, he's a bartender there, was telling me that the reason they called it that is, of course, pinball machines are meant to be moved, right?
Right.
When you're playing them. But if you move it too much, it warns you. And if you don't listen to the warning, it actually says you're on tilt.
The only reason I'm covering my head is because it's like I come from a different generation. I played pinball. I know all about what a tilt is. I thought you were going to tell us some profound story about why they specifically named it tilt. But no, you just told us that pinball machines can tilt. And everyone that's over 40 in our
duh.
What? Josiah, come on.
Yeah. Well, again, I guess that's a natural segue to the majority of the night, Travis saying analog versus digital as he beat his son at air hockey.
That's right. Go analog.
And speaking of air hockey, the picture or the video that was taken of me, I can't remember if it was a picture or a video. Maybe it was a picture.
A little bit of a video.
Of me. That was me playing air hockey against, it was actually my wife's cousin who was there. It's all about the stance in air hockey. You gotta really, brace yourself. And it was. I have lost a game of air hockey in my life, so I'm very competitive when it comes to the game of air hockey. I try to think of a clever name for air hockey, but there is nothing. But yeah, it was a good time, man. I had a blast, and of course, you and I were the last, and Grace also hung out till the end. So it was a good time. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a good fun time. We've been blathering on and on about all of our stuff. Let's actually get into the show this week and talk about some print on demand stuff. But first, you know what time it is. It's
time for the weekly dad joke.
Time for the weekly dad joke.
You bet it is.
Yes.
Well, the other week we told kind of that off-color joke about how, I was building sandcastles with my grandfather, and then my mother took away the urn. Well, that kind of got me thinking about my own actual impending demise. And that's not impending. It's like not going to happen tomorrow or whatever. But eventually, it's kind of impending when you think of like the whole of time.
Sure.
We
really
are,
way to start the show. We're all going to die.
We're all going to die. So as I'm thinking about this, in light of, my history and my grandfather's urn and all of that. I thought that when I finally do pass on, I was thinking about it. I think what I'd like to do is have my ashes stored in a glass urn. You know what I mean? Like
a glass urn.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not 100% sure that's the way I'll go, but remains to be seen.
And that's this week's weekly dad joke. That's hilarious.
I like it.
It was, and it tied in nicely. We talked about that, just kind of full circle. So yes, as always, you can use that. And, I just also real quick, Fiona is probably our friend in Australia, friend of the show, who apparently listens to these things multiples of times. Let us know if you get to use that dad joke.
Yes, please do.
On your friends and family, and all of you listening, you're always welcome to do that, and let us know of the groans and eye rolls that you receive. So, with that being said, we're going to move right into this week's point of interest.
Point of interest.
Beautiful.
So beautiful.
Beautiful. If you're not watching the video version on Spotify or YouTube, our YouTube channel, youtube.com/PrintOnDemandCast, where you can, of course, subscribe. You need to go watch that one because it was moving. It was emotional.
Wiping tears from my eyes.
Yes. So be sure to check out that video version of that beautiful, beautiful rendition of the point of interest ballad. So, Travis, what is happening in the world of POD that is interesting?
Well, there are a lot of things that are happening in the world of POD that are interesting. One that caught my eye was the fact that on March 8th, Printful is doing a pretty substantial price increase. Now, they haven't done a ton of these, at least not lately, but it was announced that they are doing a price increase, and it's a global increase. It would seem that, this is kind of par for the course, because a few weeks ago, I got an email for Printify, and it was basically showing all of their their suppliers from their platform. Sure. And it was like it was a link to a chart that showed all of the different vendors and like what they were going to, and like the different increases, like what it was now and what it would be. So it's both Printify and now Printful on March 8th is going to be increasing their prices. And while they're doing this, they realized that there were a couple of pricing things that they had made mistakes on, like some variations that weren't exactly right. And so they're using this as an opportunity to kind of clean some of that up, and simultaneously revisiting some shipping prices, which obviously has gone up substantially, as we've talked about on the show before. USPS raising their prices, UPS, FedEx, everybody seems to be kind of in this, we're all in this together. We're all in kind of this inflationary period of time where prices are going up. And so, of course, Printful couldn't stay the same. We are going through a cost of goods analysis of our own at our company. We're going to be raising our prices. It's just kind of, I received a second email from JDS, who's a main supplier of our mugs, coffee mugs, and we do a lot of coffee mugs. And so they have, I think at one point I was paying right around $1.05 for coffee mugs, 11-ounce coffee mugs, just for the mug. It's gone all the way up. I think it's $1.24, $1.23, $1.24, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you put a percentage to that, and you extrapolate that amongst all of your other costs and all of your other suppliers, it really takes a lot out of your bottom line when you sell thousands of pieces of merchandise every year. And so you have to really look at your business and figure out where you're going to recoup that. And unfortunately, you can try to absorb it and cut costs in other areas, but at some point it gets so large that you just have to raise
you
your
have to
prices.
Pass it on to the customer basically. And
Exactly.
there's a link that we're going to put in the show notes. If you're watching the video version, you can see here, I'm just scrolling through Printful's kind of webpage announcing what they're doing, what's happening, why it's necessary, learn more about industry changes. And then they kind of have a list here of stuff that they're changing the price on. You can scroll through and see exactly.
You can drop those down too and see like what they have charged and what they are charging, which is kind of nice. It's very helpful, I think.
Yep. Yeah. So if you're using Printful, I think it's something that you could definitely, it would be worth your while to obviously educate yourself and find out what's happening. If you haven't already gotten an email, if you are using Printful as any kind of fulfillment provider. But like Travis said, it's definitely par for the course. It's everywhere and everything. I can tell you that. I was joking with Madeline the other day because my dad was notorious for just wanting to go out to eat. Right? They never cooked at home, and I would always tell him and my mom, like, listen, it's cheaper if you buy groceries. Like, just cook at home. But now, is it? It's just like everywhere. So he would have been thrilled to know, like, it's the same price. I'm just going to keep going out to eat. So yeah, it's everywhere, and it's just par for the course. But definitely educate yourself. And we've talked about pricing before in past episodes. When is it time to change your pricing? And it gets to the point where when there's such substantial increases, it's time to raise your pricing because you were in this to make money too. That's the whole point. Or at least that's what they say. So, but anything else on this, Travis, before we move on?
No, it's a pretty quick little point of interest. It's basically just one more way for us to remind you, really take a look at your bottom line, in your business, because I don't care what you're selling. It's probably more expensive right now than it was a year ago or 2 years ago. So just pay attention to that. And this is one good place to start. You can kind of get an idea of what other, print on demand companies are charging and increasing, like what percentage they're increasing. And you can kind of use that as maybe at least one more piece of data for yourself and your business and how you want to handle that to make sure that you're not losing money at the end of the year instead of making money.
Yeah. Yep. 100%. So that is this week's point of interest. And we don't usually do this, but because the bumper is so beautiful, it's going to play us out of this segment too.
Point of interest.
Wow. Now, if you aren't watching the video, that actually was done live. I sang all of those parts live, and Josiah played the piano on that whole thing.
Yeah, this one right here. See?
Yeah. See? We just did that. And if you're not watching live, you won't know if I'm lying to you or not. So.
Yeah, treat for the eyes and the ears. Here on the Print on Demand cast. So if you haven't had enough bumpers this episode, here's your next fill because we're going to the main event.
Ladies and gentlemen, the main event.
All right. Travis has since bemoaned the fact that I missed the mark on that video bumper. I thought it was like a boxing intro. He was going for Ed Sullivan Beatles. But,
okay.
There can be there's other versions that can be done. It's completely fluid. So this week's main event, Travis, something that I don't know that we've talked about necessarily before on the show, which is shocking, actually, given what it is, and the amount of time you and I have both spent in this industry. So the main event we're going to talk about today, if you can't tell from the episode title as you're listening or watching, this is how to handle upset customers. It's going to happen. I've always said I've worked in customer service and in sales, both retail or inside sales or whatever you want to call it, for the majority of my life, my professional life at least. And so I've always said that the best part about this kind of job is the customers, and the worst part about the job is the customers. And it is, you can't live with them. It literally is. You can't live with them. You can't live without them, because they are the ones that buy your product. But there's also things and times where it can be kind of stressful to have to handle and navigate when they're upset. So you've heard the idiom before, the customer is always right. And my question to you, Travis, is, are they?
Well, yes and no.
Yes. Nice.
How's that for a political
ambiguous answer for you?
It really is a slippery slope, because I mean, so for example, Amazon has taken the stance, I wouldn't say their mantra is the customer is always right. I would say their mantra is the customer is always first. And so whether or not the customer's right is irrelevant to Amazon. And I would say that in today's in today's retail environment in general, or just commerce environment, Amazon's kind of taken the lead and really changed the way customers feel about the way they're getting served to I am always entitled, as a customer. And you probably can relate to this in some ways, because even though, like in one sense, when I'm the business owner and I have an angry customer or whatever, or I have a customer that's being, in my mind, just ridiculous with their demands or their wants or whatever, I can be very, like, in my mind, very critical towards that customer and be like, that is so ridiculous. I can't believe this customer's being like this. I'm a human too.
Right.
But then in the same week, I can be expecting something from my mechanic or from, a fast food place I'm eating at, and just be irate that they're not serving me with the way I should be treated and all of that. So we both have been on both sides of the counter, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I think that Amazon's really gotten this whole, the customer is always first, ingrained into our, at least in in America, it's really been ingrained into our psyche so much that you kind of have to adopt that as a business owner. So I would say that the customer, like I said, I think the customers all needs to be first, and you need to do everything in your power to appease them, to help them come to a conclusion or come to a place where they're okay with the resolution, whatever that resolution is.
Sure.
At least to the best of your ability.
Sure. I like that. I like that rephrasing, right? The customer is always first. So regardless of if they are right necessarily, they should come first, because again, like we stated in the very outset of this whole topic, they're your bread and butter. They're the ones that are going to keep buying from you or not keep buying from you. Right.
Yeah.
So there's also this tendency to develop something that you've coined. I've never heard this before, but you wrote it in the show notes, sheep disease, which is to say that, sometimes you get, and you learn this you learn this in the context of ministry when you're a full-time pastor.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about sheep disease. What is that?
So I actually heard about this from my pastor when I was in my first ministry position as a youth leader and worship leader in Kansas when I was there. And my pastor, my boss at the time, because I was on staff, he talked about sheep disease. And basically the idea is that, as pastors and as leaders in a church, we're supposed to be helping these people, deal with their problems and their frustrations. And a lot of times they can have unrealistic expectations or expect, from the pastorate stuff that we just, we're human. We can't solve all of their problems. They have to participate in that. And so there can be some frustration that creeps in as a pastor, because we're human. And what my pastor referred to that as was sheep disease, because you get bit by the sheep so many times that you get sheep disease. And then what can happen is that resentment can creep in. And all of a sudden you don't want to help them. You're just frustrated and you're just angry all the time. And it's not pretty. I mean, obviously think about that in a context of a church. That's really, really ugly, but that's exactly the same relationship or very similar type of relationship.
Right.
You might not be helping them with their spiritual, things in your business, but you're helping them with a specific transaction or a specific problem that they have, and you don't want to get sheep disease. Or if you do, you need to quickly remedy that by going, hey, all customers are not created equal, and some are going to be more of a problem than others.
Sure.
But I'm going to go into each situation with an open mind that, not all customers are idiots. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I go back to that whole, you've been on both sides of the counter thing, because I have been on the other side of the counter, and I'm sure that people that have dealt with me as a customer have thought the same thoughts. Man, this guy has unrealistic expectations. He's an idiot. And so I can have a lot more grace for my customers because I've been in their shoes. And I think we need to remember that, particularly in the pastorate, but beyond, but for this podcast purposes, specifically as a business owner, and when you're dealing with customers, you got to put yourself in their shoes. They're expecting a service, and you need to deliver that to them, even when you don't want to. It's your job. That's literally your job.
100%. So there's usually, there might be more, but for the sake of this episode and this topic, we've narrowed down 4 main reasons that they are upset, right? Mm-hmm. So the first is usually probably the most common, I would say, because of a mistake you or your vendor made, which is then a direct reflection on you and your company. We talked about this offline, Travis, where if someone gets something in the mail that they bought from Amazon, they don't know or delineate the fact that it didn't come from Amazon. Like
not necessarily. You're right.
Yeah. And in the customer's mind, it's all Amazon. They don't know that you're a third-party seller. They don't know that you made it yourself in a shop and you're, small business and you're supporting your family. They don't know that because they're just disconnected from that reality.
Or you outsourced it to another company that did it for you and then shipped it. They have no idea.
So if it's Primful's mistake, it's your mistake, right?
Right.
Because again, the customer doesn't know the chain of command or the whose hands it goes in and out of. All they know is they bought it and then they got it in the mail. So the second reason that they might be upset is because of a mistake somebody else made, like USPS, which in Q4 is real. It's a real thing.
Par for the course, my friend.
Yes. Yeah. The third reason that they might be upset is because they had unrealistic expectations. And we'll kind of get to how you solve them and how you can prevent some of these after we kind of just name the 4 of them. So the fourth one would be because they misread the listing or a mistake on their end, which is rare, still happens. I can tell you from experience, people don't read things. Even in the church world and conferences that I've been a part of and events that I've helped, been on staff for, you can clearly mark whatever you want in any kind of sign ever, and people will still ask the question, still miss the message, and still not follow whatever guideline you put in front of them. They just don't read. So it's rare, but it does happen. So Travis, let's go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say it is rare. Like this particular thing, usually if you have a customer that's upset, it's one of those first 3 things. However, that fourth thing that they kind of screwed up on, that's the one as the business owner we always go to. We're like, oh, what did you screw up this time? Let me read through your complaint here. And then we realize halfway through, oh, that was us, but that's kind of our default, unfortunately, because those are the ones that like leave the bad taste in our mouth for the customers and can give you that sheep disease that I was talking about. That's all I wanted to mention.
Yeah. So let's talk about what you can or should do about each of these scenarios, and we'll go in reverse. So let's start with 4. Okay. If
Okay.
they misread the listing or there was a mistake on their end, in my opinion, I don't know that I necessarily offer to resend or do like buyer's remorse type stuff. Like, hey, I thought I would like the green, but I liked the red instead. Or, hey, I accidentally, I thought I would fit an extra large, but it turns out I'm a large. And that kind of stuff, if I'm in a good mood that day, you know what I mean? Like, okay, yeah, maybe, hey, man, here's a discount code, or hey, here's this, or I'd love to help you. But most of the time, in my opinion, it's like, well, you're welcome to make another purchase, especially if it's a buyer's remorse thing. I'm not as inclined to bend over backwards to correct that particular instance.
Yeah, but one of the things that you said right there is great because, it's like, while it's not necessarily my responsibility that you didn't see that you were getting a shirt that, had black text and you bought it on navy, or whatever. First of all, honestly, that's my fault. I shouldn't have put that black text shirt.
That
with navy
happened, but I'll tell you what, there's been clients that we still fulfill for. That happens. Like one of the DTG, I think our DTG tech came out to me and was like, hey, this is navy, this is black lettering, what do I do? And I said, you send it. I mean, they bought it. And like they know.
And in a lot of cases with our particular situation, it could be that they even set up the store and created the mock-up for that product.
Yeah, exactly.
And chose navy blue as the shirt to put it on. So you send it in a lot of cases. But so the customer gets it. And the thing that you said was like, hey, yes, I'm so sorry that you didn't see that you ordered a navy blue. While we don't take returns for buyer's remorse, I would love to offer you a 20% off code if you'd like to repurchase something from our store. And that goes back to that whole thing where you really want to try to resolve all four of these issues in a way that's palatable for both you and your customer. In any way you can. And it's not necessarily possible in every circumstance, but that's a great example of something that you can do. It really doesn't hurt you that bad that, you want to keep that customer satisfied. The other thing I will say is it's very channel dependent. So on Etsy, they can leave you a bad review. And so you want to make sure that they're okay with that 20% off because they could choose to say, blah, 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 didn't get any good customer service. And what are you going to do about that? You're just going to have a bad review on your Etsy store. On Amazon, they can just return it. They don't even have to ask you if they don't want to.
We'll have to show the listeners the wall of return mugs you have.
Oh my gosh.
In the front room of our office. From Amazon returns.
Yeah. And then you have the Shopify thing where, there's other channels, but like, Shopify, you really kind of set the tone for that. And however you want to do that, so
there's no, for lack of a better term, like oversight or hierarchy about that might have a higher consequence if you don't necessarily do something on Shopify as opposed to Amazon or Etsy. And in some of these instances, you're putting your account at risk for not correcting the issue. Right. One thing I'll say too about that 20%, offering a discount code is there's a high probability that if you go above and beyond in that way, like Travis said, it doesn't cost you that much, doesn't really hurt you as much. But you go above and beyond, you offer them a discount. That 20% could buy you not only a repeat customer, but referrals for whatever friends that person has. They're going to send them your direction because of how you handled something that was their mistake. So you could think about it like that too. If you're like, why would I give them 20% off? Well, it could be a form of marketing, really, you get word of mouth referrals from something like that happening.
The one other thing I'll say about that particular issue is I will encourage you to be very, very good in writing or find somebody who is very good in written communication. Because what you want to do, your goal in this particular situation is express remorse, but also communicate that it's their fault without making them feel bad that it's their fault. And offering them some type of resolution that really doesn't give them everything they want, but they need to feel good about it.
Yeah, they still feel like they came away with a win.
Task.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tall task. So you really need to massage your words. And I use I have some scripts and things like that I've put together, but I'll go in and I'll tweak them as I go along. And I'm like, now that I reread that doesn't sound quite as, flowery or whatever, as I want it to. So I'll tweak it. And I've probably tweaked it 4 or 5 times, sending the same type of email, where it's like, oh, that's so sad. Buyer's remorse. You did a wrong thing, but that's okay. I mean, I don't say it like that, but you know what I mean? It like the things that you have to communicate in this situation are kind of, they can make someone go on the defensive. Yeah. And then you have an upset customer and 20% ain't going to buy their piece.
Yeah. I think that it's a good delineation, right? The difference between disappointed and upset. You can have a disappointed customer because they're disappointed, didn't fit. It was the wrong color. The text doesn't look good. You have a lot of power to determine the outcome of whether the disappointed customer becomes an upset customer, because that's different. You can manage disappointment. You are going to have a harder time putting out the fire if they're upset. And a lot of the times, the way you communicate and how you react can determine what that customer ends up being. I would say too, I think the same kind of thing goes along with the unrealistic expectations, right?
Right.
Where you can make it flowery, like, hey, I'm sorry that that's what you thought it was, or
I can't believe this thing didn't get here.
Sure.
You said 3 days of handling, and it wasn't here in 3 days.
Yeah.
Well, it's 3 days handling plus the ship. Sorry,
sure.
Same type of
email
massaging.
100%. So that, I mean, and like we're going to get to, later on how you can prevent some of these things, but I feel like the way you respond or what you should do for unrealistic expectations and a mistake on there are pretty closely related. So for the second one, working in reverse, because of mistakes somebody else made. In that scenario, Travis, USPS delivery, it arrives damaged, theft, so on and so forth. What is your inclination in that particular instance?
Yeah, I feel like I used to be a lot more I would make more excuses and not own it. Sure. I would say, hey, the post office and we can't control it. I'm so sorry. And try to get away with that. And that's just not good business. So I don't do that anymore. I'm, in my mind, I need to make sure that the customer gets the product intact. Because you could say if it's broken, like if it's a mug and it's broken, that's really my fault. I didn't pack it good enough to withstand, the post office treating it like a football in their back warehouse room.
Which they might.
Which they might, particularly during Christmas, a lot of things get thrown around a lot more.
Yep.
So you could say that's my fault, but hey, I've had, 2-day FedEx orders that, FedEx says we couldn't find the address. And then the customer's like, hey, this never showed up, blah, blah, blah. Well, was this the address? Yes, that's the address. And I would literally get it back. And I'm like, well, that's the address. And they get mail there all the time. What's, all right, I guess I got to refund this whole thing, because FedEx couldn't, find this address or whatever. So yes, I take responsibility for those types of things. There's a lot of kind of porch pirating is a new thing. I do see that. I see those things. I have a template specifically for, hey, it says it's delivered. You didn't get it. Here's a list of things to check. And we've talked about this on other episodes. But ultimately, if they ask, I will resend that item or I will refund it.
Right.
Once I've at least presented them with some options that they can take to maybe find it, or maybe help the post office find it, or maybe help them like actually knock on their neighbor's door and say, hey, did you see a package? Oh yeah, we took it in. We did, blah, blah, blah. And that does happen. Things do get delivered I get, here at my house, I get wrong mail all the time and I take it to my neighbors, but it might be 4 or 5 days. And so, customer gets hey, it's received and I don't get it. I don't know where it is. It's literally in my neighbor's, foyer waiting for an opportune moment for him to walk it over to me or whatever.
Sure.
That happens. So that email correspondence can give time for them to actually get it, and then I never hear from them again. And I'm assuming they got it or whatever. And I didn't send it unnecessarily, but
Sure.
in the end, if I need to, I will replace or refund.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty, par for the course as far as what we did at What For Apparel too. It's like, I lost I can't find it. It's lost or what have you. We would just, even though it's not our fault, we would just own it, eat it, and resend it. I mean, as much as it sucked that we didn't really have a hand in it and not getting there necessarily. But so for this last one, of course, because of a mistake that you or your vendor made, I would say my number one piece of advice for this, if you're listening, if this happens, own it. That's, I mean, start there. Yep. We've talked a lot about, not passing the buck, but I mean, you'll get so much further, I've found, with customers, and you can help safeguard them from going from disappointed to upset if you just say, hey, that's on us. That should have never left the shop. That should have never left the warehouse.
Yep.
Even if you didn't make it, even if it's a printful product that went to them, you still say that, because the truth is it shouldn't have left the warehouse if it isn't printed or manufactured correctly. So just saying up front, hey, that is on us. We are so sorry. I will address this issue with the production team and just let everyone, make everyone aware. We will do the best of our abilities to make sure this does not happen again. We're going to resend you one, and then you just own it instead of saying, well, human error, it happens. We're humans. Like that kind of stuff isn't going to get you
sorry
very far. Yeah. Like, oh man, that sucks. But hey, our DTG person's new, or, whatever. You have to just own that, because again, we've talked about the various consequences across platforms. If you don't own it on Amazon, then the customer can go and make a claim, and you now on your Amazon account are in jeopardy of losing it entirely. On Etsy, the customer will leave a review. They will make sure that everyone that hits your shop, here's the tale of the time that they ordered something from you, it showed up defective, and you refuse to take responsibility for it. On Shopify, as we've said, you're not as policed, but that's not how you want to do business. At least that's not how I hope you would want to do business, even if you have no other authority over having oversight of how you handle these situations. It's just not a good look to try and pass the buck on something that was legitimately your mistake.
Yeah, I totally agree. I had another point. I can't remember what it was, but I was just going to say, a lot of threads I see on like the Facebooks and the different Etsy and Amazon stores, and they're like, make sure you get a picture before you do any type of refund or whatever. And that's nice. And sometimes I do ask, say, hey, can I get a picture so I can show it to our production team or whatever?
Sure.
But I'm not going to require that to resend it because of the fact that I don't believe that there's as many bad apples as we on the other business owners think there are. Yeah. I really don't think there are. There are some bad actors that game the system. And you probably will run into one at some point if you haven't already. Yeah. But I think that percentage is so low. People just want what they paid for, and they paid for something, and you said you'd get it to them. So get it to them one way or the other. Yeah. I mean, that's really the bottom line. Like you said, just own it. There was one other thing. I can't remember. That's okay. We can keep moving on. Though.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like, it kind of does come down to, like you said, a fundamental world view of not being nihilistic in the fact that you think everyone's just lying and wants to screw you. Right. Everyone's bad. The majority of people are good people. And like you said, they just want the product that they purchased, and they want it to look like the picture that they saw on the site when they purchased the product. So to that point, you have an experience just in the last couple of days that
Mm-hmm.
an instance like this has come up.
Yeah, and it's actually happened this weekend. It was yesterday.
Yeah.
I saw an email from a client that I don't care. It was actually your wife.
I was going to say, I don't know why you're trying to throw her name.
So as everybody knows, we're now taking over the fulfillment that was what for apparel. And so now we're taking on making some of these home decor signs. And in doing this, we've realized that we have a much more efficient way to produce these signs using UV technology versus using DTG technology, which is what Ford did. And so we had some materials. We didn't have a bunch of materials. We had done some testing. Testing went great. We were like, okay, we're good. We're ready to go.
Yeah.
And so we sent out some of those orders that were kind of in the transition. We're still waiting on some other things to come in so we can fulfill the rest of those orders. But we had some kind of left over from what for apparel that they gave us to fulfill those orders. So sent out some stuff, got an email back from Madeline, Josiah's wife, saying, here's a picture. This customer just sent me this. It's all peeling and it doesn't look good. And it's like, I mean, it looked bad. It was really ugly. And the print part was peeling up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how did this happen? So I immediately, as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, I owned it. I said, Madeline, please tell the customer that we are, so sorry. We will get a new one out. We'll fix this immediately. It's a new print process that we're still trying to perfect. We had no idea it would do this, but we will send a new one out early next week as soon as we get the materials. I'm so sorry. And then just between me and you, Madeline, this is kind of what I think it might be. And I copied my production manager, my Tate, and I copied Josiah on it, since Josiah's, the husband. And but he's, I wanted to get everybody in the loop and be like, hey guys, what do you think happened here? So we could talk about it. And I think ultimately what happened was because we did the test and we realized that, this is probably oversharing, but because we did the test and we didn't have to use any primer on it for the sample that we made. And I actually showed it on a video, I think last week or the week before. It looks great. It's been in my office. Nothing's peeling off of that image. It looks great. Looks fantastic. I think what happened is because we didn't use any primer, the existing sign that he put in this thing, he didn't even wipe it off. And I think it probably had dust on it from being in the old warehouse. And so it was just an oversight. We're like, oh, well, we just print them. We don't have to do anything to them. We just set them in the thing. And I think it printed on, some dust and then it peeled afterwards. So that's my first guess. And we'll kind of go from there. But the point of this whole podcast is like, I kind of put my money where my mouth is. I owned it and said, this is what I did. And we're so sorry. Yeah. We will get a new one out. And it turns out that she just wants a refund. So we're going to, obviously refund Madeline. She won't have to pay for that. She won't have to pay for the shipping. Sure. We own that completely because we want to make sure Madeline's our customer and we want to make sure that she looks good to her customer, in the same way that we want her to feel good about the way we do business as well.
Right. Yep. 100%. So
fun story.
Long story short is you just have to own those instances, and there's some, some things require some follow-up, right? You can, let's say the customer wanted a replacement sign, you get that out, you'd send the customer new tracking, you'd follow up in a couple of days, say, hey, just want to make sure you got that sign, everything looked good. Madeline would do that kind of follow-up as well, just making sure everything was as expected for the replacement product. So there are some times that follow-up is needed, and it's just good customer service. Like, hey, hope you got that shirt, even if it's, oh, I wanted the green, or I hate the way black ink looks on navy shirt or whatever. And you offer them the 20% discount, they cash it in just to follow up and say, hey, I want to make sure everything's going, you got that shirt. Okay, whatever. It just goes a long way and in the eyes of the customer, because not everyone takes that initiative. Right. So, I want to talk a little bit about how you can kind of prevent or kind of hedge your bets a little bit
Yeah.
Because basically, in the words of Smokey Bear,
only you can prevent wildfires.
Only you can prevent wildfires. So, what can you do? And people are driving like, what is wrong with these guys? So, what can you do to provide bad customer experience?
Provide? You said provide bad customer experience.
Did I really? I didn't say prevent.
Yes, that's.
Well,
I hope that's not Freudian because you work for me.
No, no, that's a teaser. One day when we have a paywall, we'll do that episode. How'd you provide? You have to pay for those. Okay, how to prevent bad customer service is what I want to say. I think part of it, we talked about unrealistic expectations from the customer. One of the reasons they're being upset. One of the caveats to that is, did you manage their expectations? Right. Check your listing descriptions. We've talked about this. Make sure that the description says that the shirt is what it is. If it's a heavy, Gildan 5000 ultra cotton shirt, don't tell them it's a Bella and canvas shirt that's going to be ring spun, whatever. Don't do that. So just make sure that the mock-ups are correct. Make sure that the descriptions are good. Let them know how long everything is going to take from soup to nuts, right? You said 3 days. Well, no, it's 3 days handling and then plus the shipping. Remember, more like 5 to 10. So make sure all of that is accounted for in your descriptions, right? So, Travis, what's another thing that people can do, people listening, to prevent a bad customer experience?
Yeah, I think one of the things, you mentioned it just a minute ago, like following up after they've had a bad customer experience and you've remedied it, having some type of thing in your system that automatically kind of prompts you to send them that tracking or, send them that follow-up email. One of the things that we do is, when we send that replacement, we'll say, hey, this replacement will go out, blah, blah, blah. If you and I put it back on them a lot of times. If you haven't heard from me by this date, email me back so I can get you tracking, because I won't have tracking for another day. And I don't want to forget, if it's important to them that they have new tracking, they can email me back and then I can quickly look it up. When we do a replacement, we use the original order number for the new order number. And then we do dash replacement. So it's order number dash. So I can still look it up in ShipStation with the same order number, and I'll have two orders. One will have the original that got lost or was damaged or whatever, and then I'll have the dash replacement that I can also see, and I'll have tracking for that. So, having systems like that just kind of help you remember to do some of those housekeeping things after the replacement's gone out will be helpful for you.
Yeah, 100%. So, Travis, you mentioned an interesting statistic as well when it comes to customer communication.
Yeah.
Share that with everybody, just so, statistically speaking, what do you expect?
Yeah. So the bottom line is that avoid sheep disease by realizing that 95% of your customer communication, when customers communicate to you, it's going to be negative. They're not going to tell you when they're satisfied. Right. They're not going to tell you when they're super excited about the gift they got. They paid for something and they got it and they're done. That's it for them.
Right.
They're only going to tell you when something's, negative. And so if you can keep that in the back of your mind, it can help you, like I say, avoid that sheep disease where it's like all customers are bad, all customers have problems, and all customers, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're doing. They always screw things up. No, because 95% of your customers are never even contacting you and they're fine and they've gone about their lives, and they're happy customers. They just don't express it. It's very rare that somebody expresses, you've probably heard this. Like, how many times do you go to a restaurant and if you have a good experience, you maybe tell your best friends or whatever. But if you have a really, really bad experience, you tell everybody. Oh my gosh, I went to this restaurant. It was horrible. Oh my gosh, they did this, they did this, they did this. And I opened up Yelp and yeah, exactly. You do all the things, but it's so just having that realization in the back of your mind can help you maintain a healthy relationship with your customers, because without them, guess what? You don't have a business.
You have nothing. You get nothing. We have to find that soundbite because it is completely accurate, but you're 100% correct. I mean, I feel like it's that way with a lot of things in life, in culture, you don't see good things on the news because it doesn't sell ratings, right? It doesn't grab your attention. It's not sensationalized, but turns out there's lots of good in the world, lots of good people in the world, but you wouldn't know that if you just consumed Fox, CNN, ABC, CBS, all of these news channels. So just know, like Travis said, the majority of people you won't hear from when they have a good job. I just as a side story, an interaction I had this morning, we did shirts for the church I attend and for their kids event they had last weekend. And I saw the kids director this morning, and she was like, "Those shirts were amazing. And I want, can I order more? How many can I order? All the kids want one. How many can I get?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's talk this week." So there are instances where, especially if you're doing stuff locally, internet, you're not always going to hear because it's kind of, they just move on with their life. But there are those instances where you are able to hear like, "Hey, these turned out great. We're so excited." So we're not trying to say that you're never going to get positive feedback, but the odds are that when you do get feedback, it's not going to be the best, right?
Particularly when it comes to e-commerce.
Yes, particularly. Yeah, 100%. So Travis, anything else on this before we put a bow on it, wrap it up?
Oh, I think we said it all. Just treating your customers the way you would want to be treated. It's kind of that golden rule thing, Yes. And I think if you do that, it'll be good for your business, because like we just said, without those customers, you don't have business. There is no commerce without somebody willing to buy from you.
yeah, that's how it works. It turns out that's an integral part of the whole business model. So as always, folks, thank you so much for tuning in and for listening. Please join the Facebook group, facebook.com/group/printondemandcast. You can also like the page, facebook.com/printondemandcast. We are on Instagram now. You can go see my ridiculous air hockey stance. Perhaps I will delve into the strategies of air hockey someday on any of these various channels. Instagram.com/printondemandcast. We have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/printondemandcast. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button, because subscriptions don't mean a whole lot on YouTube. So if you hit the notification button, you'll be notified every time a video is up, and you'll never miss any piece of content from us on that platform. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us on any of those platforms I just mentioned, or you can email us, info@printondemandcast.com. And as always, wherever there are podcasts, the PODcast is there for you. Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Anchor.fm. I don't know, is Napster a thing? If it is, we're probably there. But if you're listening on the podcast app, Apple Podcast app, rather, you can leave us a 5-star review. Let us know what you think of the show, your favorite dad joke, what you'd like to hear, your favorite guest, anything. We love hearing from you guys. And if you leave us one, we'll shout you out here on the show. And you can also rate us on Spotify in the podcast feed. There's a little thing on the top. Just give us a star rating. No comments are allowed at the moment, but it means a lot to us. So as always, Travis, anything else? And before we go home, you're good to go.
I'm good to go.
We are good to go. So for Travis, I'm Josiah, and we'll see you right here next time on the Print on Demand Cast.
See ya.
Hey, babe. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Print on Demand Cast. We hope you enjoyed the Totally Tubular Show. If you got a question or a suggestion for the show, send Travis and Josiah an email at info@printondemandcast.com. Want to be wicked nice? Take a minute to rate and review the show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe now so you don't miss next week's episode. See you next time, for sure.